And as we just heard from Melina, the government shutdown is now the longest in U.S. history. And among the programs affected is the safety net known as SNAP, that more than 40 million Americans rely on to help with their food bills. Joining us now to discuss is Aron Boxer. He's the founder and CEO of Diversified Education Services. Aron, it's good to see you. I want to get your thoughts on the shutdown and the SNAP program.
Good to be here, Carrie, and thanks for having me. Look, shutdowns always expose how bloated and fragile our federal systems have become. SNAP is a lifeline for millions of families, and nobody wants people going hungry. Even as a young child in the 1970s, my mom collected what was called food stamps as a way to bridge the gap in our lives. Again, it was a temporary lifeline, but the program is also a perfect example of how Washington just keeps expanding benefits faster than it fixes. And costs keep going up. There's fraud, improper payments, as well as bureaucratic layers that make efficiency just impossible. So yes, we want to protect the families, absolutely. But we also need to be honest that a temporary shutdown isn't the crisis. The real crisis is a federal government that refuses to modernize programs like SNAP so they're sustainable, accountable, and then actually built to help people become self-sufficient and not permanently dependent.
Yeah, Aron, I want to definitely come back and explore how the program might be broken and how to fix it. But in the short term, as you mentioned in your own experience, that people do rely on it for their nutrition. So I want to get your take on, do you think that something will be done specifically on SNAP, or do you think that the government will just reopen in its entirety first?
If history is any guide, Washington will reopen the government and then kick the can down the road again. Trump himself he's been imploring the Democrats to do that. Historically, in the past, they come up with some type of temporary solution. That's part of the muscle memory. But this is a moment that should force a conversation about SNAP reformation, because the trend lines just aren't good. The costs have ballooned, as I mentioned, enrollment spikes, and then during instability, verification it's a mess. There are smart solutions, and tying benefits to workforce development, cutting red tape for states, aggressively cleaning up the fraud. The problem is about political courage. Both parties know that SNAP is sensitive, so they avoid it. And the shutdown, it's giving them a chance to fix something instead of rubber stamping yet another extension. And the question is whether anyone will be willing to take this on.
Yeah, it's such an interesting point you bring up. If you think about Elon Musk coming in with Doge, he was, in the headlines every day, and he sort of ran out of town in one way or another. Now, your specialty, of course, is education. And I want to explore the parallels that you might draw between the nation's food and education industries in terms of how the government, gets involved.
Very good question. There is a huge parallel with both sectors. They're dominated by these massive federal bureaucracies who spend just mountains of money without delivering the outcomes that people deserve. And in education, we've, again, poured billions into federal programs, yet we're seeing this inverse relationship where the money goes up, but the reading and writing scores, they just keep falling. In food systems, we subsidize everything from corn to corporate distributors, yet still families struggle with access to nutrition. And in both cases, the people closest to the problem in education, talking about the local schools and the local communities, and then we also have the local farmers, they have the least amount of control. The problem, as usual, is government. They try and run everything from DC, and what that brings is inefficiency, dependency. It cuts down on innovation. Decentralization works. Local solutions work. One size fits all, it just does not.
Yeah, it's such an interesting point that you bring up. When you think about food and access, if I go to the grocery store, almost all the food is from California, yet I live on the East Coast. And there is a sort of oligarchical element that tends to happen because of efficiencies. But with efficiencies, is there a loss of quality? Do you see any of that in terms of, you mentioned the key word, I think, being access, both to education and food. Could you explore that a little further?
Sure. I'd love to see a future where food policy actually rewards health, efficiency, and also the innovation instead of bureaucracy. That means three things. First, you have to talk about the quality and incentivize fresh, real food instead of ultra processed junk that right now the government subsidizes and they actually quietly prop up because it's cheap, but it's also extremely harmful, especially to our kids. We are I'll say the fattest generation. The amount of diabetes that we see in our communities is massive. Also, the second thing would be access. So partnering with community organizations, farmers markets, and private sectors. There are people who are already doing a better job than these federal programs. And then finally, regulation to streamline it. Small farms, small businesses, they get drowned in paperwork, drawing a parallel to education. That's what happens. You're just bogged down with all this paperwork. And these giant corporations, they can navigate that, delegate it down to their subordinates, and they're also armed with tons of lawyers. So if we want healthier kids, healthier families, and then a stronger economy, we need a food policy that supports independence and local solutions, not endless federal expansion.
Such an interesting parallel to explore the interconnection between education and food and health and longevity. Really appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us. Aron Boxer, great to see you.
Good to see you, Kerry. Thank you.